Hi, my name is Kyle, and I'm with the Korean Adoptee Stories. Originally, I was actually not going to do any Korean Adoptee story related events because I don't want to give off too much information as they're still trying to work things through with the organization. But basically, the organization we were a part of kind of fell through. It no longer exists at the moment. I don't know if I can make that public announcement, but right now they're on the workings of trying to at least uh, continue on from what they left on. So even if the original organization's still there, some of the board members are still trying to continue to work with their organization. So I guess I wanted to discuss. This is a topic that I wrote on Facebook that what sums it up is life as a lonely and ugly Asian male. Excuse me for my rather sarcastic kind of sense of humor, but it basically kind of wanted me to come up with this topic, and I think it's a good topic, and I think there are other adoptees, especially males, that had similar issues. So basically, the story goes, basically, it was about someone that, yes, he might have came on too strong. Yes, he wouldn't let her go, but I kind of felt for him because he wrote in this Facebook adoptee chat where he was dealing with rejection, and I think uh, as a male, or maybe even adoptees, or maybe if you're just a person in general, and I think it hits adoptees a little bit more about rejection. I kind of felt for the guy, and I felt some of the responses, even though it might have been the truth. Maybe the truth hurts. At the same time, I think there could have been a little bit more compassion with how with what was stated. I'll actually just read through the statement first before I introduce um, another CAD that actually reached out to me through this kind of issue is Mitchell Stone. So basically, I'm gonna keep this person censored, so I'm not gonna give out any personal information. But if he's okay, I'm gonna read what he wrote. Uh, so he wrote, just learned the girl I've been chasing had gone without a dozen times and chatting with almost daily for several years, found a new boyfriend again, and well, it isn't me. She said in the past she didn't feel we had much chemistry, even though we enjoy each other's company, and I have a number of likes and comments. We remain good friends. I don't like to give up, but do you think it's time I should? Is chemistry something that can grow over time, or is it fixed according to their particular moment in time? I was having a pretty good day, and then this got me feeling dejected again. I'll probably delete this later. And he wrote this in an Asian American chat on Facebook. So one of the statements that was pretty popular and that I don't know, it honestly, even though she's telling the truth, it kind of bugged me. And being as an adoptee that had hard time, I feel like finding dates and having the opportunities and chances, I think it even adds a bit more of a sting what with rejection. And maybe everyone does feel the sense of rejection, but or maybe someone doesn't. And this is why I was kind of afraid to bring up this topic because I heard from other few Asian males that they do believe that there is kind of there's kind of a blocker. It's kind of difficult being an Asian male versus a different race, such as a Caucasian male, and uh, maybe it's different dating from when you're a female versus a male. But I'll get back to that soon as I read her statement. So basically, she wrote, she's not using you and didn't use you. Your ego, your pride is just going after her. I'm sure she said no before, but you didn't listen. You stuck the fork in the outlet, dude. You hurt yourself. You got to get out of your fantasy you made and face reality and take responsibility for what you did without blaming anyone else. You'll learn or get right if you talk manipulative like this about someone and choose to make yourself the victim. It's not even about chemistry. It's just the fact you didn't take rejection. She doesn't owe her time or feelings, and that's sad. I don't know, that end part just it I feel for this guy, but I felt like that it's hurtful to me. I don't know why.
Yeah, but was the guy
I don't know
bitching and
anything about.
moaning? Was he bitching and moaning about another topic about this girl, and then that's the reason why people were liking that status?
Well, basically, he has 438 uh, people that reacted. A lot of them actually showed the sad face, which is nice. They put the like face and the heart face. I haven't read through all the comments, but what was your question?
Well, is there a reason why she made that bold statement?
We
Because
don't we
maybe
don't
he wrote something else
that.
that
So you're trying to do the devil's advocate. You're thinking that maybe he.
maybe he wrote something that that triggered it all, and you're not seeing it.
which is true. So I don't know the full story, but
Anyways, we can still cover the topic
this topic
regarding.
kind of brought up uh, what's it like being an Asian male trying to find dates and whether or not. And I have an example: my brother, myself, and my friend. We just met today, and I'm glad he actually reached out to me because I don't know, that post has been kind of bothering me. Originally, I was not going to do any Korean adoptee stories until next year, but something when he actually reached out to me, he told me a little bit about his story, and I don't know what you ladies think or guys think, but Mitch, I think you're a pretty good looking dude, don't you think?
It's by other people's admission. I let other people decide that, and that's kind of how I roll with it. But I appreciate it.
So I guess I wanted to ask you, when you saw my post, and I basically wrote like I basically wrote a big question about what people's. I wanted to do a poll of between male and female. Supposedly, I have bad thoughts and negative thoughts, or probably false thoughts about being an Asian male. But I do believe there's still difficulties being an Asian male. And hey, Mitch, so go ahead and explain your story. Maybe you could explain who you are, your age, and where you live right now.
Yeah. So my name is Mitchell Stone. I'm 22. I live in Colorado right now. I'm in transition to find jobs, just like everybody in this twisted economy. But yeah, that's about it. I'm a Korean adoptee as well. Adopted at 3 months. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of everything.
So you saw my post where I wrote kind of about this statement, and you're kind of interested. What kind of made you want to actually call me and reach out to me?
I only say that because I think it's a very common feeling. I think for not even just Asian men, I think men in general, it's not just related necessarily to being an Asian male. However, I think there are certain challenges and certain, I wouldn't necessarily say obstacles, I would say just unique circumstances that Asian men face that are different, say, than other men. So
Can you explain a little bit? Have you had personal experiences with this a kind of thing, being an Asian male? Can you describe some of the difficulties that you had finding women or dating women?
yeah, so growing up, I definitely didn't grow up in a diverse place. I think that anybody growing up in the early 2000s, 2010s, it's very a recent phenomenon to see the diversity that we have right now. Because when I was growing up, it was really just Bruce Lee, Jet Li, Jackie Chan stuff, and those are fine, but that's about the extent of an Asian male representation. And there was no diversity in those roles. It was always just either the high school nerd or it was the karate master that never touched anybody except the people that he wanted to destroy. So I think in terms of that, that's what I grew up with, and I think it's a very familiar tale to other people. So that I think definitely had an effect on me because like when I was growing up, I didn't want to be Asian at all. And I think that a lot of Asians and a lot of adoptees can relate and sympathize and empathize with those feelings as well. Um, yeah, growing up in high school and stuff like that, it definitely did a lot of things to my confidence. I didn't ask anybody out throughout high school or college.
Oh wow, so you never even dated in college until you probably just dated just recently, right?
Yeah, it was in recently, I'd say within this last year. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff that was going on throughout all that. But with that being said, a lot of it was a lot of trauma, I think, too, just from being adopted and being me and Asian. I think I'm never going to deny that that's not a pressing thing that I think about and that I have to think about that a lot of other men don't have to think about. So I definitely think about those things. So yeah, I think that it's a very, very interesting conversation. It's a very nuanced.
I think it's a really touchy topic because I feel like it's kind of pinning males versus females or whites versus Asians, and that's why I kind of had a really difficult time bringing this up because I knew it would kind of start something in people. I mean, it starts a fire in me, and me being so intertwined with rejection and finding other females, it kind of affects me. I guess you can go ahead and explain your
So
what have you been doing?
there's these two
there's these it kind of twists. So with men in general, they're either nerdy, undesirable, or into kung fu, while women are submissive and China doll like. And I guess women have the ultimate reason to say that they don't like the attention because they are viewed as sex objects, but men, it's different. So I feel that since this is just a topic about men, we'll just kind of stick towards men and just the perspective I see. But I don't know if you heard of it. We'll just get into it. But there's this stereotype that Asian men have small dicks. And because of that, I think that is something that I can kind of relate to, even though I don't. But I think that's been one of the stereotypes that people say in general about Asian men. And that stemmed to like the, although we remain youthful, it stems to the fact that we might be less
Less
mature,
alpha male.
less alpha male, less more submissive,
Not as
and
desirable.
not into sports or treated like we're shorter, which is possible. But there's just seems to be some obstacles that we seem to face. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think it's very nuanced again. Um, I would say that a lot of that is more or less true, are just the stereotypes. I think the stereotypes that have been made out have been about that. And historically, if you have done the research and the history on it, the United States, to kind of fend off the imperialism and the yellow peril in the early 20th century up to present day has all been about just demonizing the East and making it either exotic or that the enemy. And the most childish and also the most pressing way to do that is, demonize somebody's body parts or make them feel like they're literally smaller than they are. And I think that's exactly what the United States has done for the last 100 years. With that being said, things are changing, but I don't deny that those things are that's what America's history has been, and it's not just Asian Americans and Asian men specifically. It's just anybody that doesn't fit inside of their all-American sort of look, in my opinion. So,
So I guess I want to get into it. How'd you finally meet this girl that you're dating?
She gay?
Is she
Was she?
American or is she Asian or maybe black, or was it just something that you wanted to just try out since you haven't dated, or is there how'd you feel in general about the experience?
I think that it's always a changing process, in my opinion. I think that it's very natural for people to like people that look like them and that obviously have shared experiences with them, and I'm no different. With that also being said, I have a very open mind, in my opinion, towards lots of different types of people. Um, More or less, I mean, everybody has their type, but I think that having racial preferences is probably the dumbest thing ever, and only because it completely reduces people to caricatures and it doesn't really fully flesh out people. And I think that a lot of people don't like to admit that they do that, but they do it. And the truth is that it's a very psychological thing. Like, people do that because they see the caricatures and then they compare it to the caricatures, and it's built in our nature. With that being said, since I know that, I purposely go out of my way to kind of flesh out people and to say, like, I'm not going to just do that. So I am very open-minded towards a lot of people. It doesn't really matter to me because I think that, again, the reasons why people are attracted to people is kind of sometimes very arbitrary. And I don't know. I think that we can kind of see it now too, though, like just the idea of white privilege. It's definitely a thing. And like I said, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say, though, that I also believe in Asian privilege too, black privilege, anything like that. But I think that those circumstances and those experiences that are collective amongst Asian Americans or Black Americans or really anybody that, again, outside of that mainstream is unique to them. And those problems sometimes can be very difficult to kind of diagnose.
So many adoptees, like KADS especially, I don't know if you knew that was a short term for Korean adoptees, but because of your location where you grew up, which is most likely a white area, do you believe that because you grew up in a white area that it was really more difficult to find a relationship and that's why it's been so long since you've actually dated, or do you actually have a different opinion on that?
I will say this. I will say that I think it is. I definitely think it's a factor. Um, just not being around people, I think, that really understands you. Kind of feel like an alien in a foreign land that doesn't feel like yours. So I think that's true. However, I came to the conclusion that it was not because I was Asian that I was like this. It was really because I was insecure. I was afraid, and that I didn't really even try, and that I was very like I never took any risks. I was very closed off. So, but with that being said, that was a personal, and I think that's a character flaw for me. But that being said, the stereotypes and everything like that, all those things didn't help me. They just helped me believe the same negative perceptions of myself. And you can look at the statistics. Asian Americans are more likely to be bullied in school, yet they're less likely to report it. And I think that's a big issue too. So, I mean, I personally wasn't bullied, but I think that that's kind of like an example of kind of like just the struggles that Asian Americans face, and that they don't really talk about it and they brushed it off. And I am no different. Like, everybody used to make Asian jokes around me when I was growing up in high school. And I kind of went along with it because I'm just like, whatever. But deep down, sometimes those things did hurt, and that the things that they said made me feel less than a lot of the times. And I think to a lot of Asian Americans, they some of them might never admit it, but those things do cut deep to them. And especially now these days, I don't believe in them, and I try to. I just don't think they're ever acceptable anymore.
So when you went to college, did you think you got that wow factor when you've seen more diversity, or was the college you went to not diverse, or how did that experience go?
Kind of the cultural shock I was kind of mentioning when we were chatting a little earlier. He's kind of referring to when you first met
Another Asian
more
person,
races
or
actually.
Korean even.
Yeah, I would say that it actually started before that, because I went to Korea back in 2014 when I was 16 years old. So that, I think, was more of a turning point and a pivot point, because before then, I literally didn't. I wanted to be white. I wanted to not look like me. I hated my eyes. I hated my hair. Um, I didn't like my body at all. I had no self-confidence in my body at all. But when I went to Korea, it was very rare, because it was the first time I ever saw people that like looked like me and that were actually proud to be who they were. And I really liked that. I thought that was really cool. And since then, like, I kind of went on this trajectory of always kind of like seeking those sort of things out, of finding people that are confident in their own skin and confident in not in all sorts of skins, I should say, all different shades and different professions, anything like that. So I went to community college when I was 16, and community colleges are probably the most diverse places I've ever been in my life. You get old people, young people, you have Asian, Black, Latino, anything really, or queer, gay, all those things. So I felt very exposed to that.
Travis didn't know this about you. Can you explain your life between the college years where you actually were homeschooled and a little bit?
Do you like any specifics or?
Yeah, what was your life like kind of being homeschooled? Did you feel isolated? Did you have a lot of interaction with people? I know you said you did play sports outside of just staying at home.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I guess if the question is if I would homeschool my kids, I would say maybe. But I do think that my parents always made the argument of like, yeah, schools are bad influences on kids, but truthfully, I think the social experience and hanging out with different people definitely helps with a lot of people. It can definitely hurt too, but I think on my experience, I don't think it necessarily did. It didn't really benefit me as much, and I think that I should have probably gone to a public school. But on the flip side of that, a lot of the things I learned and a lot of things that I am today is because I didn't go to public school. So it's kind of like you take what you get, sort of thing. So.
So I guess my next question is, did your parents raise you to be white, or did they introduce you to anything Korean? Because you were actually pretty young where you got to visit Korea. So what was the thing that ignited all that fire? Because I didn't really get into Korean culture until I was like 2009, which is maybe, I'm 33, but that wasn't until maybe like I was well out of high school and into college. So what was that sparked your interest in Korean culture? Because did your parents pressure you, or did you find just say, hey, I'm not feeling really comfortable in my skin here. I want to see what's like where I was born, or is there any other information that you can give us?
Honestly, my parents have always been extremely supportive of whatever we chose to do. But I just think that like any parent, an adopted parent, adoptee parent, like they don't want to push something that kids are not ready for. And the worst thing that could happen is they rush a kid, and they basically make it all worse and their identity's in complete flux. So I think that they had that often in mind. But I think though they were always very open. Like I said, like if we wanted to explore those things, they'd be like, yeah, let's do that. And really how I went to Korea came up is because my old church, my mom put together some sort of mission trip, more or less, kind of like a heritage trip for us. And it was sponsored by our church and sponsored by different people. So that's mainly what that was. And that was probably one of the most, that was an extremely transformative experience. Yeah, transformative experience. But in general, my parents have been extremely supportive. My mom went with us actually to there, and I went 3 times actually, 2014, 16, and 18, and then with my mom.
Oh, did you go to the Olympics or
No,
the
that was
Pyeongchang? Oh, you did.
No, I went in April and May.
Oh,
So,
I see.
Yeah. But
we actually visited our birth family in February of 2018. We went to the Pyeongchang Olympics, which is why I asked. We also went in 2008. We actually visited the first time our birth family in 2018. Did Kyle tell you that?
Nope, I didn't.
Yeah, so have you had, by the way, I guess that brings another topic. Have you been able to seek your birth family out, or
maybe share a little bit of information if you have anything about them?
They gave me a lot of information when I was born. I still have a lot of their information. I know their ages, their occupation, their religion, their height, their blood types even. So they gave me a lot of information. But with that being said, I submitted paperwork to try to find anything, and nothing really came back. And in truth, I wasn't let down by any means. I took it for what it was. So
you seem like a very mature and like kind of pretty chill kind of guy. I think it's actually kind of remarkable, you being so young, you can have such a peaceful outlook, because there's still a lot of adoptees that I feel like are so intense or so
like some people
hurt,
just
so upset.
Like a lot of people simply make really bad choices. His ex was a meth addict. She hated her adoptive parents. Her birth family rejected her
at age 8. The door was kind of shoved in her face
when she was like an inner teenager.
I feel like she never was the same ever since, and then they just end up in that cycle of self-destruction. And I think there's a lot of, I don't know, that's why I asked if you met a lot of other adoptees and whether if they're actually socially or mentally
turmoil.
Or at turmoil, or maybe they're at peace or well adjusted. That's kind of what I'm kind of seeking, and maybe you can explain a little bit about that with your life and other people's.
Totally. And I actually have. I've experienced and had a lot of conversations, a lot of adoptees especially in the last 2 years, as I just have evolved, I think, in my adoption journey. But a lot of adoptees experience a lot of the same things, like majority of them do. And I think I kind of talked about this with Kyle a little bit before, but I think the biggest difference, though, between, say, like adoptees that are 25 and younger and adoptees that are 25 and older is just the community and the just resources. And I actually know another adoptee that is kind of the similar age as you. He's 31, I believe, 31, 32. But he also struggled a lot with his own identity and his sense of self, because he didn't have, like, I went to adoption camps when I was growing up. I talked to a lot of adoptees through that camp. And one of my biggest mentors and one of my biggest big brothers, I'll call him, he's also adopted, but I met him through that camp as well. And we talk a lot about just what we've been through, and just how, like, he's been such a big help in me kind of like expressing that. So I think that's the biggest difference. And I think that just through this there's an adoptee group as well on Facebook. That has been the biggest difference as well, because I can't imagine, when you take it back 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, there was no opportunity for really a lot of people to gather like that and really talk about those things. A lot of those pressing issues were basically, there was no one to talk to really about that. I also still had the benefit of having 4 adopted siblings, all from Korea as well. So we also used to talk about that as well. But, just having adopted siblings sometimes isn't enough.
What is your opinion on them? Do you think they lived a pretty well-adjusted life too? What are the age differences, by the way? Is there some in their 30s, 20s, or still in their teens? Or
Are you talking about the group?
no, your
family,
siblings?
your
Because I
family.
was just curious
Gotcha.
that, like, were they well-adjusted? Ended any issues? Met their birth family? Have regrets, resentment, things like that?
I think it's a mixed bag for all of us. I think, though, in general, we're very well adjusted. Our parents, like I said, my parents are some of the best parents I've ever met. They're tremendous people, and I just have so much love and respect for them. So they did as best as they possibly could do under the circumstances. With that being said, yeah, I mean, I've had my share of troubles. I know my brother definitely went through these phases. And my oldest sister's 25 and my youngest brother is 15. And my youngest brother, he has, I think has an autism disorder. So he's on the spectrum. And then my youngest sister, who's 20, or 28, 19, she's 19. She has a disability. She only has one hand, a partial hand. So if you're talking about the literal implications of adoption and just those sort of things, yeah, they had those. And I've talked to them multiple times too about it. And there's definitely, they definitely all have their own struggles and their own way of going about it. But like I said, I think the difference is just my parents and their resources that they had and our resources that we have of just that we can reach out and we can connect. So
Were you someone that, I'm just curious, were you someone that really enjoyed the cultural camps, or was something that was pushed on you and you
Yeah.
decided to go, or did you really envelop the experience and really enjoyed interacting with other people that looked like you or maybe similar experiences? Tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, totally. No, I love the camps. I really had a good time there. And it's kind of for the opposite reasons of like everywhere else, like most kids when they come to the camp, they're like, I don't like any of these kids because they don't look like me. Actually, that's very common. Or they look like me. It's really like it's weird, culture. I think it's kind of like a reverse culture shock. So that was a thing. But I wasn't like that. I loved being able to finally talk about things with people and actually feel like, oh, wow, like I'm like everybody else now. And a funny story, actually, when I was at camp once, I had a different colored T-shirt when I was, I think, in the 4th or 5th grade. And I cried right on the spot because I wanted the same shirt as everybody else did. So I think that just goes to show you how important those camps were to me and just being a part of that community. So
I think you have a really great perspective because there's actually some Korean adoptees that felt like that their culture was forced. But are you generally like a pretty social individual then? You are not shy and you were able to come out of your shell?
I think, like, I'll always say this and just about my own life, and I'm not embarrassed to say it, of just, no, I was not a very social person. I was very shy and very afraid of other people. I couldn't look people in the eye for a long time. I had very low confidence. But in like the last 2-3 years, things have just definitely changed, and I just have a different view of myself to the point where like I enjoy spending time with people. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy looking in them in the eye. I enjoy just experiencing life with them. So I think it's just more a matter of just deciding that I wanted to do something different. So
Could you give credit to the reason why you changed and why you kind of wanted to come out of your shell? Do you think it's because you visited Korea at 16 next to these
Your
culture
good
shocks
parents
and your
or
good parents? What kind of made you want to
explore?
transform and explore?
that's a good question. I wish I could give you a singular answer of like what specifically it was, but I can't. It's not one moment. It's more like a collection of moments. But I think that, yeah, going to Korea was a stepping stone in my opinion. Going 3 times is huge. Because like I would say the first time I was just like, I love Korea and I love my culture and I love everything about it. I would read everything I could about it. I try to immerse myself in it all. I went to a Korean church for 6 months. But on the flip side of that, like when I went to the Korean church, I didn't really feel Korean. Like I felt less Korean when I was there, actually, because they're always speaking Korean, and they were definitely different from me. So the next time I went to Korea, it was like I kind of rejected it and pushed it away. So the flip side of that. But I would just say the reason why I wanted to change is just that I I think that I used to use adoption as a crutch. I used to say like, oh, well, I'm adopted, and like no one, like I wish I could see my real parents, and like I wonder what my life would be like that. But I just came to like the conclusion and just the end of myself to say like, just it's the past is the past. And as much as you want to like change it, as much as you want to go back and redo things, you can't. And the only thing you can do is like pick yourself up and move forward. And I think that was the hardest lesson for me to learn, because I think that most of my life up till I was 20 was chasing the past and was trying to chase things that I didn't have. And it just didn't really make me happy. And I just realized I could never get it back. So.
Okay, so another topic that the reason we started this whole channel was related to mental health. And I think mental health is really important when it comes to the Korean adopted community. My next question to you is, have you ever had feelings of like crisis or depression or any other mental health
Kind of like what
issues
we were talking about with suicidality. You kind of
that
mentioned that
maybe
you did not have.
that maybe caused you issues, or actually was the experience pretty well when it comes to your mental health?
I would say that I was relatively well adjusted. I don't really, just naturally, I don't feel like super sad all that much. There are better days, obviously, than others. And there were definitely dark times, when I was in high school, 16, 17, 18. Those are tough, very tough. And there are many days where I was just like, I have like a few things that are kind of keeping me afloat, but I'm kind of just like a little, a little down on some things. But I would say I don't really feel like it's serious. Like none of it, in my opinion, was ever pressing enough to me to say like, oh, well, like I need to, like I need something, But I don't want to be the person that self-diagnoses myself. But at the same time, like I personally don't, I don't think, at least in my opinion, that it was all that important, or yeah, it wasn't. I don't think so. But with that being said, I went to counseling too, because I think everybody should. But just to kind of like sort through a lot of my own identity issues and my adoption issues, and even my own masculinity. I had to sort through a lot of those things, and I feel like I am like 10 times further along because of those things. So.
Can you explain a little bit of examples of how you learned to accept your masculinity and your Asianness? Could you explain a little bit of some of the thoughts that you actually changed?
Yeah, well, kind of going back to my own self-image, like I literally did not think that anybody would ever like me. And I'm not talking about girls, I'm talking about guys too. I thought no one liked me. I genuinely thought no one liked me, and I always thought it's because I was different and I was like the weird kid. And I always was trying to like be accepted and fit in. But when I went to counseling, that's the biggest thing that we tried to undo, to say like, once you talk about it, and one of my favorite public speakers, Brené Brown, talks about this a lot, of just like, the more vulnerable you are, the more you just admit your shame, the more you just get used to it, and you just don't feel shame anymore. Because like, I think like this is not just unique to Asian men with penis sizes, whatever. A lot of men actually have a lot of bodily insecurities that they don't talk about. And I did for a long time too, in my whole body. But by me talking about it in counseling, and me saying like, yeah, sometimes I don't feel that attractive. Sometimes I feel like I'm short. or not even short. I don't feel that short, but I feel skinny, or I feel whatever. I feel bad that I have this hair, blah, 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 any of those things. But the more I would talk about it, and the more I would say like, oh yeah, I feel this way, and the more I got reaffirmed from that, the more I just became much more comfortable in myself to say like, and not to mention, the more you open up and the more you explain yourself and the more you open about your struggles, it allows other people to do the same thing. So by me opening up, I saw other people that also struggled through the same things. And that just made me think to myself, like, these are people that are far more successful, that don't even look like me, but they're talking about like, oh, well, sometimes I feel this way. And I'm just like, wow, if they feel that way, they technically have more than I do, but they feel this way. So I don't think I should have any excuses necessarily to feel that way anymore. So
even if you didn't have mental health issues, you did seek counseling. So my question to you is, it seems like that the accessibility was there. So were you covered on your mom's insurance, or how did that work? Or maybe the accessibility wasn't there, but you were able to get it anyway, or was it through school or private? Or tell us a little bit about that.
So I was through my school at the beginning just because it was free, and I was just like, this is very good. I actually started out as career advice, but it kind of delved into a whole new different breed of just identity, because I think even your career is such a part of who you are. So I did that, and after that, my counselor said, yeah, I'm actually going to start my own practice. I'm going to give you a discounted rate. So I'm like, I might as well just take advantage of that discounted rate. And I did. And it was actually a very traumatic experience, I think, that kind of led me to go to it more often, because I think it was my brother left for school, and then my parents just moved to Montana. So, I was kind of getting over that whole phase. But all those things combined kind of like pushed me to go there, because I was the type of person that was like, nah, counseling, why do you need counseling? Just talk to people about it. You'll be fine. But just the act of going for me was the big difference. Just to say that you did it and to have that relief and that safe space to talk about things is what really made a difference in my life.
Were you scared as hell going to counseling? And you seem like really open talking about counseling. Did you feel comfortable telling your parents that you're going to counseling or you need counseling?
I briefly mentioned it to my parents here and there, and honestly, that's the one thing I tell my parents and any adoptee, or anybody, anybody really should go to counseling. So definitely suggest that. Um, but yeah, I don't. It was good, I would never take it back. So my parents were fine, honestly, with it. My mother went to counseling for plenty of years for a lot of the things that were just within her own personal life. So she was totally open for it, and I think that that was great. So
Okay. So we'll delve a little bit deeper in the relationships again. If you're uncomfortable, you can just say you don't have to answer. So I know you mentioned that the relationship you had, you just weren't into her. I know you're really young and you haven't been on a lot of dates with a lot of women, and I don't know, are you getting a lot of girls that are trying to show interest in you, or you're not aware of it? Or can you explain a little bit of the situation with your dating life?
well, right now it's a little skewed, so I don't I don't know if that's a fair assessment. But before, I didn't think like I think that, like I said, just having that vulnerability and that the overcoming of shame really it empowers me, and it gave me a lot of confidence. Because like the last time I was out, I was in San Diego, and like I was just talking to a bunch of girls, and I had a great time. So I don't think of it. I think it's tough to say though right now, just because it's the government doesn't even recommend you go out sometimes. But at the same time, like I would say that, yeah, if you were to compare it though, like 2, 3, 4 years ago, it's like exponential how much has changed. And I do relate that more to my own, my lifestyle change and things like that. However, I would say that, yeah, it's definitely difficult. It's different and difficult. I can see it and I notice it. and it's not fair always, but at the same time, I just try to make do with the best I can.
So do you have abandonment issues and trust issues when you were dating this person? Did you have that fear, or with counseling, you kind of have such a solid sense of self that you're not insecure like that? Could you explain a little bit of your emotions at that time, and maybe now?
yeah, I would say that it was a work in progress, and I think like everything, it's a work in progress. And for me right now, it's a work in progress. With that being said, I am extremely happy with the progress I made in the last 2 years. I had extremely big issues, honestly, with finishing jobs or sticking with the job. I would turn down job offers, because I was afraid that they'd let me go one day. And I was afraid that I would do bad and that they wouldn't let me, I would just not work for them again. So I would turn jobs down for that. And I think in terms of women, I think a lot of it was more just a matter of like, I think that adoptees have two kind of modes. They have the cling mode, where it's like, once I have you, I'm never going to let you go. So you're going to stay with me
And
forever.
then the runaway mode, maybe.
Yep. And then the other one is exactly that. They have the runaway mode, where it's just like, you'll never ever get close to me, because yeah, you'll just never get to me. And I experienced both, honestly. I would say most of my life I was a runner. I love running away from those things. And I would never get close to people because I didn't want them to come into my life and then just leave again. So that was a lot of me. But in the last year, I've worked through it a lot. I worked my internship and I finished it out and I did a good job. That was the first kind of experience I've had with working more full time. But that was huge stepping stone. And with that girl too, it's just like, just even considering the option and kind of fleshing it out was a huge step forward, because a lot of the times in the past, I wouldn't even try. I would not even try because, again, that idea of running. So actually, right now what's happening is more of the cling sort of thing, where it's just like, I want to find somebody or do something. I just want to cling really hard. But I'm also kind of trying to work through a lot of that stuff too. And I feel like I'm still in a pretty good place, honestly, with a lot of those stuff. But again, who knows? A lot of things can change, and improvements are always a possibility.
My brother is asking, are you dating right now, or are you single?
I'm not dating. I mean, I'm dating. I mean, I'm trying to date, but
Okay.
right now I'm not seeing anyone. I'm yeah.
So at this moment with your adoptive issues, say you just found someone you really like, because you worked all your issues, you feel like you actually can commit to this person and maybe have the ability to love a woman. Do you feel like you're at that stage?
Yeah, but I'll be completely honest too. I think that a lot of me, like I try. Everybody's told me I have very high standards, but I personally believe I have standards to protect myself from. If I have high standards, right? I say here, and then people don't meet my standards, I'll just be like, well, I knew it was going to fail, so I'm protecting myself from rejection because I don't try. So I'm very aware of that, and I am very open about that too. And I'm working through that a lot, and I still I feel much better about that piece as well. But that has a lot of the reasons too that I just kind of like cut myself off from people, because again, it's like kind of like that thing of like, you set the bar really high. So then if you fail, you're just like, well, I failed. So it's like, I tried, but I failed. So but it's not on me, so.
So are you that type of guy that networks or through jobs or through friends or mutual people that you find up ending with a relationship, or do you do the good old fashioned like Tinder or dating
Online.
sites, East Meet East or Korean Cupid or things like that, other dating sites? What is your preference, and have you had any luck with that?
Well, in this last year, things have definitely changed just because obviously we had to switch to online. So I've been using a little bit more online stuff. So like Hinge, Tinder, all those things, blah, 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 blah. It's been, which has been fine. But I personally think that that's the downfall of technology. I think that while it is an option and it's a good option, I just don't think it's the best option. And I feel I was fine with networking. I didn't really care. And I enjoy just talking to people and getting to know people. So it doesn't bother me. So.
Yeah. So I guess right now, why don't you explain a little bit of your to me, I guess explain a little bit of your experiences with online
So I guess
dating and
Kyle wants me
share to
to
him about
share
what you
my
experienced.
experience. I'm 33. I've been single for some years now, but I really haven't been able to get the chance to date anyone else.
Is there a reason
So
why? Have
I've
you
been
been?
on many dating sites, but my most recent one is a catfish who's I'm 33 and she pretended to be this Korean girl who's like 25, but she ends up being a 13-year-old girl. So that's definitely not good for me, and that doesn't look good for me at all. But I've kind of struggled with this for years. My previous relationship was actually on Korean Cupid, and I met her. She's actual Korean from Korea, and that's how I met her. Uh, do you feel yourself in your situation right now that you'll never experience that and you feel just happy being single, or are you a guy that's looking and finding rejection, or do you feel like maybe something will happen? I'm still hopeful about it.
I don't know. I think that it's important to be content, more or less, or where you're at, um, in any situation, because I think desperation sometimes isn't good, and I struggle with that on and off, because I think society tells us, especially as men, that our worth comes through sexual encounters and our worth comes through our sexuality. But if that is true, then that means, well, I mean, I should say sexuality, especially with women, right? But if that is true, then that means people that are asexual, people that are gay, any of those things, they're not men then, right? People won't consider them as men. So me personally, I realize that real quick, and I say to myself, like, those things are not really, they're not good measures, in my opinion, to measure a person by. Because I've known people that have, my sister, for God's sake, she did all these crazy sexual things, and I just think, though, that, like, it doesn't make me think of her any less or more. But I don't think that it's not a good measure, in my opinion, of a human being. Um, so that, by getting that block out of the way, though, it helps me to just say, like, you know, it makes you look for something more holistic, and makes you look for uh, something a little bit more substantial. Now, with that being said, I think that it's great to enjoy people and enjoy time in life. I think everybody should do that. I just don't believe in selling out for it, and I think that I struggled with that a lot in my life, because I think that's the hardest part about being Asian. Sometimes an Asian man is because that's exactly it. Not even the United States, just the whole world. Men's value comes from what they can provide sexually and what they can make, all these things, right? But like I said, if that were the case, then poor men that have no money are worthless. If that is the case, then people that are 5'3", men that are 5'3" have no worth. But to me, that's a lie. I don't think that's true at all, because they obviously haven't met those people and they don't know what they're worth. So I just try to make it more holistic, in my opinion. And I think that having that more holistic outlook kind of makes me have a better attitude towards it at all. Again, with that being said, I get jaded like anybody else. It's tough. And I think just modern dating is kind of a travesty, because it's all about instantaneous.
Are you
Gratification.
I'm curious, there's a lot of Americans on Tinder, like white people. Do you actually find yourself getting swipe left, or do you actually get people that actually are interested in you?
It's a mix. When Tinder when Tinder had their free fat passport thing, it was actually really good. I used to talk to a lot of girls, and I enjoyed talking to them. But no, I mean, I've seen the studies and I've done the research, so I think that there's definitely a huge disparity. They're showing. I remember one, like, mini experiment. There was one, a very attractive Asian man, and he had like 1,000 likes. But then another person, I think a regular, just a white American, he had like 5,000. So I think it's true. I don't discredit that. But to that point, I think that is exactly why.
I'm curious, does that narrow your choices then? Are you looking for someone other than white? Or maybe do you feel like, well, maybe there's someone that will like me, whether I'm black or white or Asian? Or how do you feel about just generally about the situation that you experience with all the ideologies regarding the stereotypes and what you encounter on like dating sites?
I think that in the end, I want authenticity. Like, I think that that's exactly, like I said, why online dating is just pathetic. And I think that it's not often, I think at least for young people, doesn't do them any good most of the time. And I think the reason why is because it reduces people to 4 or 5 pictures. It reduces them to a catchy pickup line. And I think that like, that's not how reality works. Like when you go see people, they are the sum of all the parts. They're not just the parts individually. So I think that's exactly why there's flaws in online dating because it just refers to stereotypes in my opinion.
I'm
And
just curious. It brings up another question. You went to Korean camps. Why never you dated there when you were younger than 18? I don't was did you just never thought about it, or you weren't attracted to them, or they were from different cities? And that's I'm just curious. How come you if you went if I personally experienced that, I'd be looking for the girls and see if I could hook up with anyone. But I was just totally not into the culture at the time. So what's your explanation on that?
I would say that for one, the reason why is that I just don't honestly think I really cared as much because I always tell myself like, if I really wanted to do it, I would do it. It's not like I couldn't do it. I know I could do it, but it's a matter of like, I just didn't care. Like I really just didn't care. Like I thought I cared, but the truth is I really didn't care enough. So that's one. The second reason I think was still insecurities. Like I just didn't really think I had any chance either. So it's like those two things in a combination kind of just made me say like, well, I didn't honestly find a lot of people, like I said, that had a lot of substance. And I don't know if like I was just reducing people to exactly what I accuse other people of doing. But at the same time, I would say that some people are exactly like what they present themselves as. And I think that a lot of the times it's very true. And I don't feel like there's a lot of depth amongst people in a lot of cases. But I think that a lot of that is I would take that as my responsibility to say like, people aren't deep because you're not looking for deep people and you're not really even trying. So I take that on myself to say like, that is my fault. So I have to accept that. And I do.
So how many people have you dated? Is it a Can you give a number, or is it something that you uh
It was just one. It was just
okay, so
one.
just one.
Yeah. I
Have you experienced heartbreak yet then?
Heartache, maybe.
Because I
Yeah,
know you're so young. Okay. How were you during that time? And
it
what did you
was
do there?
tough. It was tough.
Mhm.
Um, but it really helped me reshape the way I think of love and the way I think of relationships.
And
And
what is that?
well, because I think that society kind of pushes us this idea that relationships and love and sex is like the best thing ever. And the truth is it can be, but a lot of the times people get into bad relationships because they sell out or not, they buy into what is being sold. And it's glamorized everywhere we go, right? They're like, oh, look at all this. Like they're cuddling or they're doing this and they're doing that. But what we don't see is we don't see the fights. We don't see the times of loneliness when people are gone. We don't see the doubt that we have for other people in our lives. We only see the smooth sailing and we only see the tip of the iceberg. We don't see everything underneath. So I learned that a lot too, just from my experience with a girl, but also with just looking at my other siblings. That I think like anybody, they bought into that sort of mindset too, which isn't bad. It's a great to learn, but it's just a lesson of like love isn't like that. And I can tell from my own parents that love is something like I can genuinely say that I don't love anybody except for my parents and my family because of the commitment and the amount of dedication that we have to each other. And even though it wasn't perfect and we had lots of fights, we were always there for each other. And to me, that's what love is.
Your parents itself must be a good example because I think a lot of Americans in general, or people in the world, are getting divorced. I mean, our parents actually divorced, and I know quite a bit. But I guess they were able to hold it get together, and maybe that kind of affected you to have more of a positive viewpoint of relationships and marriage in general.
Oh, I 100% agree. And I say that because my own father, his dad was not a part of his life. his father also cheated on my grandma multiple
Oh wow.
times. And my
Mm.
dad had extremely difficult times growing up. He had a lot of insecurities about who he was and and what he provided as a man, because his own father wasn't even in his life. So
Mhm.
my dad is a perfect example of that. But I'm proud of Tim to say that he did it differently. He could have
He never
easily,
che- he
nope,
never followed the pattern of his grandpa where he ended up cheating too, and
his dad,
I mean
yeah.
the
His
dad,
dad,
yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
And I think that's extremely admirable. And I look at
Mhm.
my grandpa now and I look at him, I'm just like, you're such a sad man.
Mhm.
He had 5 wives. He's cheated
Wow.
multiple times. And I look at him now, he's a sad man. He has no family. Only family he has is us, and we see him maybe once a year. And he just doesn't have, I don't think he has much substance at all. So I think that I see right through it, and I'm very, I think it's really cool. So
I'm curious. A lot of families that adopt, they usually are pretty well off. Was your family pretty well off? What kind of occupations did your your parents support you with? Was it middle class or any financial issues, or maybe it was just pretty much a good stable family?
I think it was extremely stable family. Looking back on it, like there's very few things that I'd say like that my parents, that they lacked in terms of love, in terms of care, in terms of resources. My dad was a corporate lawyer, so he was very well off. He went to law school, all those things, so very well off. My mother was a manager of HR, so also very successful. Um, so yeah, there was none of those things, in
So
my opinion.
were they able to put you guys like as a priority, even though that they had all these prestigious jobs,
Prestigious job.
or did you
Always.
just learn to accept it? Oh,
Always. I mean, like I said, my parents are just amazing. Like we have disagreements now, but I have so much respect for them because I know that at the end of the day, they will always fight for me. They'll always be in my corner. So,
is there a reason why they decided to adopt a whole bunch of Korean kids, or was she able to
Not have children, maybe.
not have children, or was it just something that
she, my mother had issues with infertility for years. They wanted to have kids for many, many years, but she just struggled. And I think one of her friends adopted a kid, and they wanted to adopt. Well, they wanted to adopt because of that. So that's really what happened. And really just the rest was history. Just they're like, we want this kid and that kid. I don't know why we had 5, but they just felt it that they needed to do it. And sometimes I ask myself, like, that's a lot. But then I also say to myself, like, they wanted to do it and they did such an amazing job doing it. So at the end of the day, it's only power to them to say that their decisions were justified.
So I guess since you had such a good example growing up through your parents, there's a few adoptees that had such horrible experiences through their adoptive parents and maybe their birth family as well, and it kind of spreads through a pattern that they don't want children themselves. You growing up in a pretty stable household, do you see yourself wanting to get married and have kids, and you see yourself being happy in that type of? Do you find yourself wishing that, or do you actually are okay with what you're at now, even if you are single?
I mean, I'd love to get married. My goal is to get married one day. My goal is to, have kids of my own, or I really don't care at this point. Like I think I'm adopting kids myself would be very difficult just because my own experience, just judging off of my own experience, I can't imagine what it'll also be like. It'll also be very like, I don't honestly think, I'd love to think that my adoption experience would help me with adopted children. But in my opinion, it's so different for each adoptee that the truth is that it doesn't matter. Like it's just more about how you handle it. So um, I'm very open though in terms of like what my family will look like, and I don't see myself really ever really getting married anytime soon. At least 10 years, in my opinion. But it's not. It's definitely something I think about, and I think about often. So.
I'm just curious. This is just a side note. I mean, like you had a good adopted family. We had a good adopted family. We actually visited our birth family, and I guess you tried. But my question is, are you actually aware of all the experiences that people have regarding these horror stories of adoption?
Oh, oh, oh yeah. I've heard of a lot of bad stories. Um, I would say definitely more so 30 on up. and anybody born in like the 1980s anybody born before the 90s, I would say, in Korea, and even early 90s is kind of tough. But anybody born before that, I've heard just such horrible things. I remember reading about a story of just like a kid. He was adopted when he was like 4 or 5, and he was just walking the streets of Korea, and they just adopted him out. And I've heard a lot of stories of Korean girls getting adopted too, and they're basically, once they got to the States, they were abused, and they got into abusive relationships, and it just kept going on, and the cycle repeated itself. So it was horrible. The 80s was not kind to adoptees. The 90s were much better, and a lot of my friends were born in the 90s and the early 2000s, and just the whole shift in the Korean government, the Chinese government, because I know Chinese adoptees as well. The whole shift has just changed dramatically, and the amount of support that adoptees have, the amount of community that they have, like I said, is just completely different. So I'm very appreciative of that fact.
So can you explain? You've been around quite a bit of other adoptees. Have you known anyone in person that had traumatic experiences at all? And are you?
You can
with
take
them?
my own sister. My own sister,
Really?
she used to cut herself.
Wow, your sister had psychological issues, even if you guys had a really good family. You're saying, huh?
Right.
Interesting.
And she left home when she was 16. I'm never sure. I can never honestly say how much adoption ever plays into that stuff, because I do think that at the end of the day, like, people make their own decisions regardless of their past or not. But I don't think it helped. I never think it helped her. Her own mother, I think her mother was 16 when she had my sister. So a lot of history, I think, was there for her. And she had many traumatic experiences. Her first boyfriend was extremely abusive. And yeah, just in general, just not a good person, in my opinion. So she's told us all those things, and she was like raped in a parking lot, for God's sakes.
I have a lot of compassion for the type of adoptees that have those kind of issues, and I'm sure you yourself. What is some advice that you can give? I know that you yourself seem to grow up well, but I guess even if your sister, she had issues.
So just to add to that, like, my clarity is that there's a lot of adoptees that believe adoption is basically childhood trafficking, and they believe it so much that they want something to completely reduce adoption to zero. And I'm just curious, since you had a good adoption, what are your thoughts on that, and how do you feel these people can handle it when they have such a bad experience?
How can they heal?
I don't know how to.
Such
I
trauma.
don't on a personal. I don't know how I could help them because I had such a good adoption. Do you have actually any say or advice for that, or since your sister experienced something like that?
And what is she doing now? Is she better off right now?
Oh, she's married now, and
okay,
she's
great.
very happy, and I'm very happy for her. So that's that. I think the best advice I would give is kind of like what I experienced with our domestic adoptees, because I did a camp where I was in charge, or I was counseling domestic adoptees. And I think one of the biggest things you can do, because those kids, they are very similar in the sense of, like, those kids come from very broken families. I've heard a lot of kids that come up through the system, their parents basically neglected them. Their parents didn't feed them. These are extreme examples, but they happen. But even in the best case scenarios, their parents might see them here and there, right? And they might kind of take care of them here and there and have some loving experiences, but they're 4, 5, 6, even 12 when they get adopted out, and all those stuff press on them. So the advice I'd give to them, and kind of like for them to grow up, is community. I think being around other adoptees and having that safe place to talk to them and having an opportunity to, like, be around people that are like you is huge, absolutely huge. Because the more they can talk about, the more that they can share, and that they can have strength in numbers per se, the more I think that they can kind of suffer through it. Honestly, is what it is, because it's not like the suffering will go away if they talk about it per se, but it's kind of like a catharsis, in my opinion, for them. And I would say that's very similar for a lot of older adoptees or anything like that, just to kind of like air it out. And because I think that at least for me, my struggles were difficult because I'd never had people to talk to about what I felt and
I'm
what I
curious.
thought.
Did your sister ever blame your adoptive parents for them raising her wrong, or?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh, really?
really?
I would say that they did. Yeah, she did. I did. All of us did growing up here and there. But I think deep down we knew that they honestly had our best interest. Yeah,
I know
in
she's not
hand.
here with us, like to talk, but could you explain through your own lens, how was she able to heal from not that bad pattern of being, I guess, not liking herself and then end up falling for men that abuse her and that kind of bad. How was she able to stop it, I guess, and heal
She
from it?
also went to counseling. She actually
Okay.
saw a counselor that was a specialist in adoption.
Okay, great.
So that was
Wow.
huge for her, very huge. The second thing, I think it was definitely time and space, in the sense of like she didn't spend a lot of time alone. She didn't spend a lot of time to reflect on the decisions and the feelings that she had. So when she had the time and she went to counseling in between, I think all three of those things really help. And I think the final thing too is faith and love from her family, and especially our parents. This is extremely difficult, I think, when other people are going through trauma, because the first thing that my parents want to do and I want to do is just step in there and say, like, you need to stop doing this. But at the end of the day, like, if you step in and she's just going to do the same thing, it's like that's not your decision.
So you, as her
So
brother, you had frustrations with your sister, you'd say, when she had cut herself, and you get mad, and or were you able to kind of step back and
Let her figure it
let her
out.
figure it out
Or,
and not hold the reins, let go of the love kind of a little bit, I guess.
I mean, my sister is a very headstrong woman. She's a very, very solid girl, and she wouldn't. I think that if I stepped in, she would be like, "No, I can take it." I will give that to my sister. That she is probably one of the more tough. She is one of the toughest people I know because she can sit in there in the line of fire and just take it. And she deals it back. She's very strong in that way. And I think that that's very impressive in my opinion. So I would love to, but at the same time, like, it's not my place. And I don't think it would change anything. So
So I guess, are there any other things that you want to share before we end the call? This is a pretty long chat, but I think it's really, I guess it's therapeutic, I guess, even for me, and I think it's therapeutic for my interviewees too, so they could get a little bit of things off their chests and share this kind of stuff. I think it's really important to talk about. I don't think Facebook's or social media is the best place to do it, but I really like doing these videos because it's a bit more at a civilized kind of back and forth, and you don't get like that toxicity of the backlash and kind of the bullying mentality, I feel like, in those posts. So I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you would like to add?
no, I think it's good. I mean, like I said, the more that I do this, the more that I'd be open about it to say, like, yeah, this is what I have, the more I feel less shame about anything. And I honestly can tell you, though, that's exactly how I got through a lot of it. It's just doing the same thing I've been doing, is just saying, like, I'm open. And I'm just very happy and grateful that, people listen to me like you guys, and that I have safe places to talk about those things because, there's probably a lot of mutual feelings and identity crises that is shared among us. So
Are you interested in doing another interview with other people? Because there's another guy that I could forward you to if you want to still speak.
totally, yeah.
Okay.
And I'd love to just talk to you guys about
Okay.
more kind of like
Yeah.
more in depth of kind of like what you've been writing
Hmm.
and what you've been talking about, because I empathize again with a lot of those things, and I want to help people kind of like process through those things because
okay,
it's
my
tough.
last question for you is this. So you may not have had a lot of mental health issues, but you did go to counseling. So my question to you, mental health is pretty important. I understand, whether it's you who have it or someone like your sister that might need extra help with counseling. My question to you, what is the best advice you could give someone that might be in a crisis or in a bad state of mind or suicidal? What are some things that you could tell them that, hey, life is okay, and generally get them into a more positive state? What's mindset? What is some advice that you might
Yep.
have? As maybe if you're talking to your sister too, maybe.
Yeah, I guess.
I think a lot of the times I'd first give them a hug. I think that the power of physical touch is so much more powerful than we ever can imagine. But I would just say from my experience, it's just like, it's okay. Like maybe the life doesn't seem okay now, but just let's try to get through this 5 minutes, 5 minutes, give it all out, get it all out, 5 minutes, then make it 10, then make it 30, make it an hour, 24 hours, it's life seems so hard when you try to make it like 7 days, like, oh, like shit, I have to get through 7 days of this torture. But if you can say to yourself, like, it's just, let me get through today. Today might not be great, but what can I do today that makes me feel better? It's huge. And I don't know, just tell people that, like, yeah, it's not, don't feel bad. Don't feel the shame that you have to feel this way. It's okay. It's really, it is okay to be not okay, honestly. And I think that's very, very true. So
I think you're really wise for your age, especially being so young, but I really appreciated this talk with you.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I said, yeah, I'm open. Open line of communications really with anyone. Just let me know.
I'm curious. What are your hobbies, and what are the things you like to do, and what are the things you specialize at your job? Because we might have some resources for you if you're interested in just doing some volunteer work within the CAD community. We don't know now, but I'm just curious if that's something you're into, and maybe there's something that you could help.
I know
provide.
you said you're like a computer guy, it sounded like, or that's what you majored in.
Yeah. So my hobbies is I like to read a lot. I like to write. I love traveling. I just like going to new places and spending time with people. I love sports as best as I can. So I don't know. I feel pretty open to a lot of things, but those like 4 or 5 things are primarily what I enjoy doing. So
I think what I'm going to do, if you're okay with it, I'm actually going to start sharing people's, I noticed the other gentleman that's actually kind of doing these other adoptee, he's talking Asian Americans in general. I think I can't remember. It's something Asian American talking, and it's more of a podcast. You don't have to show your face or anything, but I think it's really great what they're doing. They've got like 15 episodes right now, and on their chat, they're actually having the interviewers share some of the like personal information, like their Facebook page, and maybe our viewers, if you're okay with it, that it'd be okay for them to reach out to you.
Would you ever want to do it?
yeah.
Would you ever want that?
Yeah, if you like to write, I do some of these documentaries. I could send that to you as well. It kind of a person just wrote like what their adoption experiences was, and I just would go get B-roll kind of footage. So we can do that too eventually in the future too.
Yeah, no, I'm open. Like I said, I am your resource, honestly. Use me however you need. But I believe in the community, so I'm open to really doing anything. So
Great, thanks.
All right, seem like a great guy. Thanks.
yeah, no problem. Yeah.